A Werewolf Romance, written by Olivia Smith. Prologue. My uncle sold me for 3 silver coins when I was 7 years old. He didn't even look back as the slaver's cart rolled away with me chained inside. I learned that day that family means nothing when hunger bites deep enough. So I survived the only way I could. I became someone else. I cut my hair with a rusted blade, bound my chest with stolen cloth, and learned to walk like a boy, talk like a boy, bleed like a boy. For 8 years, I was invisible, safe, forgotten, until the Alpha King came to inspect the labor camps, and his wolf recognized what I'd been hiding all along. His eyes turned gold when he looked at me, and I knew my disguise had just shattered, and everything I'd fought to survive was about to change forever. Before we dive in, tell me where you're watching from. What country are you in, and what time is it there right now? Morning, afternoon, or midnight? I'd love to know. Drop it in the comments, then let's get into the story. Chapter 1. The Alpha's boot stopped an inch from my face. I kept my eyes down, staring at the cracked leather, counting my breaths the way I'd learned to do when fear tried to choke me. 1, 2, 3. Don't look up. Don't let him see. The inspection line stretched behind me. 40 boys, all of us covered in quarry dust, all of us trying to disappear into our own skin. But I had more to hide than the others. I always had. You, the Alpha said, his voice cutting through the morning air like a blade through silk. Look at me. My heart slammed against my ribs. I'd survived 8 years in the labor camps by being invisible, by keeping my head down and my secrets buried. Now this man, this Alpha King everyone whispered about, with equal parts fear and reverence, was demanding I meet his eyes. I lifted my gaze slowly, keeping my jaw tight, my shoulders squared the way boys did. The way I'd trained myself to stand since I was 7 years old, and my uncle sold me to the slavers. The Alpha's eyes were dark brown, almost black, with flecks of amber that seemed to catch the early light. He was tall, taller than any man I'd seen, with broad shoulders that filled his black coat like he'd been carved from mountain stone. His face was sharp angles and hard lines, beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. But it was his stillness that terrified me most. He didn't move, didn't blink, just studied me with an intensity that made me feel like he could see straight through my disguise to the girl I'd buried beneath. "What's your name?" he asked. His voice was quieter now, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. "Luca," I lied, using the name I'd stolen from a dead boy 3 years ago. My real name, Livia, hadn't been spoken aloud in so long, it felt like a ghost. "How old are you?" 15, sir." Another lie. I was 15, but I'd been telling people I was 12 for years to explain why I was smaller than the other boys, why my voice hadn't dropped, why I had to work twice as hard to keep up. Then something shifted in his expression. His nostrils flared slightly, like he was scenting the air, and his eyes, those dark eyes with their amber flecks, began to change. The brown bled away, replaced by molten gold that seemed to burn from within. I'd heard stories about alphas and their wolves, how their beasts could rise to the surface when they felt threatened or recognized something important. But I'd never seen it happen. Never been close enough to an alpha to witness the transformation. Now I was watching it happen 2 feet from my face, and every instinct I had screamed at me to run. "Impossible," he whispered, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. Then louder, sharp as a whip crack. "Everyone out, now!" The overseers scrambled to obey, shouting orders, herding the other boys away from the inspection line. Within seconds, the quarry yard was empty, except for me and the Alpha King, and his wolf, which I could feel pressing against his skin, demanding something I didn't understand. He took a step closer. I took a step back. "Don't run," he said, and there was something in his voice that made my body freeze against my will. "I'm not going to hurt you." "Then what do you want?" The words came out rougher than I intended, edged with 8 years of survival instinct. He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. I want you to tell me the truth, he said softly. Tell me what you really are. My blood turned to ice. No, he couldn't know. No one knew. I'd been so careful, so perfect in my disguise. I'm a laborer, I said, forcing my voice steady. Nothing more. The Alpha's eyes flared brighter, pure gold now, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of command, the kind that made wolves bow and humans obey without thinking. Strip. The word hung in the air between us like a death sentence. My hands started to shake. If I refused, he'd know I was hiding something. If I obeyed, he'd see everything. The cloth binding my chest, the curves I'd starved myself to minimize, the truth I'd buried so deep I sometimes forgot it myself. I was trapped, and we both knew it. Please, I whispered, hating how small my voice sounded. Don't make me do this. Something flickered across his face, surprise maybe, or recognition. He took another step closer, close enough that I could smell him. Pine and smoke, and something wild that made my wolf stir for the first time in years. I'd kept her locked down so tightly I'd almost forgotten she existed. But now she was waking, stretching, reaching toward this Alpha like he was water and she was dying of thirst. You're her, he said, his voice rough with something that sounded like awe. The lost daughter. The one they said died in the camps. I opened my mouth to deny it, to lie one more time, but before I could speak, he reached out and grabbed my wrist. The moment his skin touched mine, everything changed. Heat exploded through my body, starting where his fingers pressed against my pulse and radiating outward in waves that made my knees buckle. The bond, the mate bond I'd only heard about in whispered stories, snapped into place like a chain wrapping around my heart. And from the way the Alpha's eyes widened, the way his breath caught, I knew he felt it too. No, I breathed, trying to pull away. But his grip was iron, and his wolf was rising, pressing forward with a hunger that terrified me. You're mine, he said, and the words carried the weight of ancient law, of instinct older than civilization. You've always been mine. I looked up at this Alpha King, this stranger who'd just claimed me with 2 words and a touch, and felt my carefully constructed world crumble to dust. I'd hidden for 8 years to stay alive. Now the one person who could destroy everything I'd built had found me. And the worst part? My wolf was singing with joy, like she'd finally come home. Chapter 2. 8 years ago, I was a different girl. I wore dresses that my mother had embroidered with silver thread, and I ran through our family's estate with my hair loose and wild, laughing like I didn't know what hunger felt like. My father was a beta in the southern pack, respected and wealthy enough that we never wanted for anything. My mother sang while she cooked, and the house always smelled like honey bread and rosemary. I thought that life would last forever. Then my parents died. The fever swept through our pack like wildfire that winter, killing dozens before the healers could stop it. I watched my mother's face turn gray, felt my father's hand go cold in mine, and suddenly I was alone. 7 years old and orphaned, with no siblings and no one to protect me. My Uncle Titus arrived 3 days after the funeral, all false sympathy and cold eyes. He was my father's younger brother, a man I'd only met twice before, both times briefly. My father had never liked him much. I remembered that now, remembered the way Papa's jaw would tighten when Titus's name came up. Don't worry, little Livia, Titus had said, ruffling my hair like I was a pet. I'll take care of everything. He did. He took care of the estate, the money, the land, everything my parents had built. And when 3 months had passed and the pack's attention had shifted elsewhere, he took care of me too. He sold me to a traveling slaver for 3 silver coins, and a promise that I'd be sent far enough away that no one from our pack would ever find me. I remember the night it happened. Titus woke me after midnight, told me we were going on a trip. I was still half asleep when he led me outside, still trusting him because he was family, and I was 7, and I didn't know that family could look you in the eye and destroy you without flinching. The slaver's cart was waiting in the shadows beyond our gates. 2 other children were already inside, both of them crying softly. I didn't understand what was happening until Titus handed the slaver his coins. and turned to walk away. "Uncle?" I called after him, my voice small and confused. "Where are you going?" He didn't answer, didn't even look back, just kept walking until the darkness swallowed him whole, and I realized with horrible clarity that he wasn't coming back, that he'd sold me, that I was worth exactly 3 silver coins to the man who was supposed to protect me. The slaver locked me in the cart with the others, and we rolled away into the night, leaving behind everything I'd ever known. The labor camps were worse than anything I could have imagined. Children worked from dawn until dusk in the quarries, breaking stone and hauling loads that should have required grown men. We slept on dirt floors, ate scraps when the overseers remembered to feed us, and learned quickly that weakness meant death. I watched children drop from exhaustion and sickness, watched the overseers drag their bodies away like they were nothing more than broken tools. I was small, weak, obviously a girl, which made me a target. The first time an overseer cornered me, I was 8 years old and barely strong enough to lift a pickaxe. He grabbed my hair, yanked my head back, and told me exactly what he planned to do to me. I don't remember the details of what happened next. My mind has blocked most of it, but I remember the fear. The bone-deep terror of knowing I was about to be destroyed and having no way to stop it. One of the older boys saved me that night. His name was Marcus, and he was 13, already hardened by 2 years in the camps. He beat the overseer bloody while I huddled in the corner, shaking so hard I thought my bones would break. "You can't stay like this," Marcus told me after, his voice rough but not unkind. "You're too pretty, too obviously a girl. They'll destroy you within a week." So he taught me how to survive, how to cut my hair short with a stolen blade, hacking away the long dark locks my mother used to braid, how to bind my chest with cloth so it would stay flat, how to walk with my shoulders back and my hips straight, no sway, no softness, how to deepen my voice just enough, how to spit and curse and fight like a boy, how to become invisible by becoming someone else entirely. It worked. Within 2 months I was Luca, a scrawny, quiet boy who kept his head down and worked hard enough to avoid attention. The overseers stopped looking at me with hunger in their eyes. The other boys accepted me as one of them. I was safe, or as safe as anyone could be in a place designed to break children into pieces. Marcus protected me for another year before he died, caught stealing bread and beaten to death in front of all of us as a warning. I cried that night, but only in the darkness where no one could hear me. Boys didn't cry. Luca didn't cry. For 8 years I buried Livia so deep I sometimes forgot she existed. I became Luca completely, living inside the disguise until it felt more real than my own skin. I stopped thinking about my parents, about my old life, about the girl in silver thread dresses who used to run laughing through gardens. That girl was dead. Only Luca remained, a survivor, a ghost, a boy who didn't exist outside the lie I'd created. Until today, when the Alpha King looked at me with those gold-burning eyes and saw straight through every wall I'd built. Until his wolf recognized mine and the mate bond snapped into place like destiny catching up to me. Now I stood in his presence with my wrist caught in his grip, feeling 8 years of careful survival crumbling around me, and I knew everything I'd fought for was about to be ripped away. Chapter 3. The Alpha, his name was Titus, though I refused to think of him that way, because it was my uncle's name, and the coincidence made my stomach turn. Didn't let go of my wrist. His fingers were warm against my skin, sending sparks of heat up my arm that I desperately tried to ignore. The mate bond pulsed between us like a living thing, demanding acknowledgement, demanding I accept what my body already knew. I wouldn't. I couldn't. "Let me go," I said, keeping my voice level despite the panic clawing at my throat. He studied me for a long moment, his golden eyes searching my face like he was trying to memorize every detail. Then, slowly, he released my wrist and stepped back. The loss of contact felt like being dunked in ice water. Sudden and shocking and wrong in a way that terrified me. "You don't have to be afraid," he said quietly. "I'm not going to hurt you." "You're an alpha," I replied flatly. "Alphas hurt people. It's what you do." Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or regret. "Not all of us," he said. "And not you. Never you." I wanted to believe him. That was the worst part. Some deep, stupid part of me that I thought I'd killed years ago wanted to trust this stranger. Wanted to lean into the bond and let him protect me. But I'd learned the hard way that trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. "Why were you inspecting the camps?" I asked, changing the subject before I could do something foolish. "These children are dying. Someone should have reported it months ago." His jaw tightened, and I saw anger flash in his eyes. Not at me, but at something else. "Someone did report it," he said. "Multiple people. But the reports were buried by local officials who profit from the camps. I only found out 3 days ago, and I came immediately." He looked around the empty quarry yard, his expression hardening. "This ends today. All of it. Every child in these camps will be freed, and the people responsible will face justice." I stared at him, trying to process his words. "You're serious?" "Completely." "Why?" The question came out harsher than I intended. Why would an alpha king care about labor camp children? He turned back to me, and the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. "Because I was one," he said simply. The world tilted slightly. "What?" 20 years ago, I was exactly where you are now," he continued, his voice carrying the weight of old pain. "Orphaned at 6, sold to the camps by distant family who wanted my inheritance. I spent 4 years breaking stone before my father's brother found me and brought me home." I couldn't speak, couldn't reconcile this powerful alpha, this king, with the image of a child laborer like me. "That's why you recognized me," I whispered. "Why you could see through the disguise." He nodded. "I know what survival looks like. I know what it costs to bury yourself so deep you forget who you really are." His eyes held mine. "And I know what it feels like when someone finally sees you again." The bond pulsed between us, warm and insistent, and I had to look away before I did something stupid, like cry. "I'm not going back," I said, forcing strength into my voice. "Whatever you think you know about me, whatever your wolf is telling you, I don't care. I'm not your mate. I'm not anyone's anything. I'm just trying to survive." "I know," he said softly, "and I'm not asking you to be anything you don't want to be." "But Livia—" "Don't call me that," I snapped. "That girl died 8 years ago. I'm Luca now. Only Luca." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "All right, Luca. Will you at least let me help you?" "Help me how?" I asked suspiciously. "Get you out of here. Give you a choice about what happens next." He gestured toward the camp around us. "You've survived this place for 8 years. You don't have to survive it for another day." I wanted to say no. Every instinct I'd honed told me not to trust him, not to accept anything that sounded too good to be true. But I was so tired. Tired of hiding. Tired of being afraid. Tired of waking up every morning wondering if today would be the day someone finally saw through my disguise. "What about the other children?" I asked. "All of them," he promised. "Every child in every camp I can find. They'll be freed, fed, given proper homes. I swear it on my pack's honor." I studied his face, looking for the lie, the catch, the hidden price. But all I saw was sincerity and a bone-deep determination that reminded me of Marcus, the boy who'd saved me all those years ago. "If I go with you," I said slowly, "I want your word that you won't force the mate bond on me, that you'll let me leave if I choose to." Pain flashed across his face, so quick I almost missed it. "You have my word," he said. "The bond is yours to accept or reject. I won't force anything." It was probably a lie. Alphas always lied when it suited them. But I was out of options, and some reckless part of me wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, not all powerful men were like my uncle. "All right," I said. "I'll go with you, but only until I figure out what to do next." He nodded, relief visible in the way his shoulders relaxed slightly. "Thank you." Then he did something I didn't expect. He pulled off his coat and held it out to me. "Here, put this on." I stared at the coat like it might bite me. "Why?" "Because you're shaking," he said gently, "and because I can smell your fear from here. The coat will mask your scent, make you feel safer." It was a small kindness, the kind I hadn't experienced in so long I'd forgotten what it felt like. Slowly, I took the coat and wrapped it around myself. It was huge on me, hanging past my knees, but it was warm and it smelled like him. Pine and smoke and safety. "Better?" he asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He smiled then, just a small curve of his lips, but it transformed his whole face, made him look younger, more human, less like the dangerous predator I knew he could be. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you out of here." As we walked toward the camp gates, I kept waiting for the trap to spring, for him to reveal his true intentions. But he just kept walking, his presence solid and steady beside me, and for the first time in 8 years, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, I'd finally found someone who wouldn't sell me for 3 silver coins. Chapter 4. The Alpha's camp was like nothing I'd ever seen. White tents stretched across a meadow just beyond the quarry, each one flying black banners marked with a silver wolf. Warriors moved between them with military precision, their armor gleaming in the afternoon sun. I counted at least 200 soldiers, maybe more. This wasn't just an inspection party. This was an army. "Where are we going?" I asked as he led me through the rows of tents, his hand hovering near my back, but never quite touching. "My command tent," he said. "You need food, water, and medical attention. Then we'll figure out next steps." Medical attention. The word sent a spike of fear through me. "I'm fine," I said quickly. "I don't need a healer looking at me." He stopped walking and turned to face me, his expression knowing. "Because a healer would see what you're hiding." It wasn't a question. I lifted my chin, defiant despite the fear churning in my gut. "Yes." "I already told you. I know what you are," he said quietly. "The disguise doesn't fool me anymore. But if you're not ready for others to know, then I'll make sure no one else finds out. You have my word." I searched his face for the deception, the cruelty, the betrayal that I'd learned to expect from powerful men. But all I saw was patience and something that looked dangerously like understanding. "Why are you being kind to me?" I asked, the question ripping out before I could stop it. "What do you want from me?" His expression softened. "I want you to be safe," he said simply. "That's all. The bond—" He paused like the word hurt him. "The bond doesn't mean you owe me anything. It just means I'm hardwired to protect you whether you want me to or not." "That's not how alphas work," I argued. "You're supposed to claim me, force the bond, make me submit." "Is that what you've been taught?" His voice carried an edge of anger, though not directed at me. "That alphas are monsters who force themselves on unwilling mates?" "Aren't you?" I shot back. He was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was raw with old pain. "My mother was forced into a bond she didn't want," he said. "I watched what it did to her, the way it broke her spirit, turned her into a ghost. When she finally died, I promised myself I would never do that to anyone, especially not to my mate." The words hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't expected honesty, hadn't expected him to share something so personal, so painful. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't be," he said. "Just understand that I mean what I say. You don't have to accept the bond. You don't have to want me. But you do need to let me help you survive the next few days, while we sort out what happened to you and who's responsible." I wanted to argue, to push back against his kindness because kindness always came with a price. But I was exhausted, bone deep, soul tired, exhausted. And the thought of letting someone else carry the weight for even a few hours was too tempting to resist. "Okay," I said finally, "but if you try anything—" You'll gut me with a stolen blade, he finished, the corner of his mouth lifting. I'd expect nothing less. He led me to the largest tent in the center of the camp. Inside it was surprisingly comfortable. A large bed covered in furs, a desk piled with maps and documents, and a small table set with food. Real food, not the thin gruel and stale bread we got in the camps. My stomach growled so loudly it was almost embarrassing. Eat, he said, gesturing to the table. As much as you want. No one's going to take it from you. I approached the table slowly, half convinced this was some kind of test. But when I picked up a piece of bread and bit into it, no one stopped me. No one hit me or told me I didn't deserve it. The bread was soft and warm and tasted like honey, and I had to blink back tears because I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten something that wasn't meant to keep me just barely alive. The Alpha watched me eat, his expression unreadable. After a few minutes, he spoke. I need to ask you some questions about what happened to you. I tensed, the bread turning to ash in my mouth. Why? Because there are laws, he said. Laws about selling children, about running illegal labor camps. If someone sold you, I need to know who so I can hold them accountable. My heart started to race. It was 8 years ago. It doesn't matter now. It matters to me, he said firmly, and it matters to the law. So please, tell me what happened. I set down the bread, my appetite gone. For 8 years I'd buried the memory of that night, locked it away where it couldn't hurt me. But now this Alpha King was asking me to dig it back up, to relive the moment my uncle looked me in the eye and sold me for 3 silver coins. I was 7, I started, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. My parents died in a fever outbreak. My uncle, my father's brother, took me in, or that's what I thought. 3 months later, he sold me to a slaver in the middle of the night. The Alpha's expression darkened. Your uncle's name? Titus, I said, and watched his eyes widen slightly. Titus Silverclaw, Beta of the Southern Pack. Silverclaw, he repeated, his voice tight with barely contained rage. That's one of the wealthiest families in the Southern Territories. Your father was Darius Silverclaw? I nodded, surprise flickering through me. You knew him? I knew of him, he said. Respected Beta, strong warrior, known for his integrity. When he died, everyone assumed his estate went to his brother. It did, I said bitterly. Along with everything else my parents built. Including me, apparently. The Alpha stood and began pacing, his movements tense and predatory. Titus Silverclaw has been on my council for the past 3 years, he said, and his voice could have cut steel. He's advised me on policy, sat in on meetings about protecting vulnerable pack members, and the whole time he stopped himself, visibly forcing his anger back under control. When he looked at me again, his eyes were burning gold. He will answer for what he did to you, he said, and it wasn't a promise. It was a vow. I swear it on my honor as Alpha King. I should have felt vindicated, should have felt satisfaction that my uncle would finally face justice. But all I felt was hollow. It won't change anything, I said quietly. It won't give me back the 8 years I lost. Won't make me less broken. You're not broken, he said, and the certainty in his voice made me want to believe him. You survived something that should have destroyed you. That makes you stronger than most warriors I know. I looked away, unable to handle the intensity of his gaze. You don't know me. You don't know what I've done to survive. Then tell me, he said, moving closer. Tell me everything. Let me know you. And for reasons I couldn't explain, maybe it was the bond, maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was just the desperate need to be seen after 8 years of invisibility. I did. I told him about Marcus and the Overseer, about learning to fight and curse and spit like a boy, about the children I'd watched die, the friends I'd lost, the pieces of myself I'd cut away to stay alive. I told him everything, and he listened without judgment, without disgust, without any of the reactions I'd feared. When I finally stopped talking, my voice was hoarse and my hands were shaking. The alpha reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and took my hands in his. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for trusting me with your story." "What happens now?" I asked, too tired to hide the fear in my voice. He squeezed my hands gently. "Now you rest. And tomorrow, we start making sure no one can hurt you ever again." Chapter 5. I woke to sunlight streaming through the tent and the smell of food that made my stomach clench with hunger. For a disorienting moment, I didn't know where I was. The furs beneath me were too soft, the air too clean, the sounds outside too organized. Then memory crashed back. The alpha, the mate bond, my uncle's name spoken aloud for the first time in 8 years. I sat up quickly, my heart racing. The alpha's command tent was empty except for me. A tray of food sat on the small table: fresh bread, cheese, fruit, and what looked like roasted meat. My mouth watered despite the anxiety twisting my gut. A rustle at the tent entrance made me tense, but it was only a young woman in servant's clothes, her expression carefully neutral. "Good morning," she said. "His Majesty asked me to check on you. Are you hungry?" I eyed her suspiciously. "Where is he?" "Meeting with his commanders," she replied. "He said to tell you he'd return within the hour." She gestured to the tray. "Please eat. He was very insistent that you be fed properly." The kindness in her voice made something in my chest ache. I wasn't used to kindness without conditions. I ate slowly, forcing myself not to gulp the food down like an animal despite my body's desperate hunger. 8 years in the camps had taught me to eat fast before someone took your portion, but I had a feeling that wasn't necessary here. The woman, she introduced herself as Elena, waited patiently while I finished, then offered to help me wash. "I'm fine," I said quickly, alarm spiking through me. If she helped me wash, she'd see everything. The binding around my chest, the scars from years of hard labor, the truth I'd hidden for so long. Elena's expression softened with understanding. "His Majesty explained that you value your privacy," she said carefully. "I've brought water and clean clothes. I'll wait outside if you'd prefer." It took me a moment to realize what she was saying, that the alpha had told her to respect my boundaries, had made sure she wouldn't push. The relief was almost overwhelming. "Thank you," I managed. She smiled. "Of course. Take your time." When she left, I stripped off the filthy clothes I'd worn for weeks and looked down at myself for the first time in recent memory. I was too thin, ribs visible, hip bones jutting sharp. Scars crisscrossed my arms and torso from 8 years of quarry work and fights I'd barely survived. The binding around my chest had left marks where it rubbed, permanent reminders of the disguise that had kept me alive. I washed quickly with the water Elena had left, scrubbing away layers of quarry dust and sweat. Then I faced the clothes she'd brought, loose trousers and a tunic, both in dark fabric that wouldn't draw attention. Boys' clothes, I realized. He'd made sure they brought me boys' clothes so I wouldn't have to explain why I needed them. The consideration made my throat tight. I was just finishing dressing when the tent flap opened and the alpha entered. He stopped short when he saw me, his eyes widening slightly. "You look," he started, then seemed to catch himself. "Better. How do you feel?" "Confused," I admitted. "You're being too kind. There has to be a catch." His expression turned sad. "The catch is that I'm going to ask you to do something very difficult," he said quietly, "and you're not going to like it." My guard went back up immediately. "What?" "Come with me to the Southern Pack," he said. "Help me confront your uncle and expose what he did." The words hit me like a physical blow. "No," I said immediately. "Absolutely not. I can't. I can't see him again." "I know it's asking too much," he said, and the understanding in his voice made it worse somehow. "But Livia, Luca, whoever you want to be right now, you're the only proof I have. Without your testimony, he'll deny everything. Say the slavers took you illegally, that he had nothing to do with it. He'll walk free and keep his position and his wealth, and nothing will change." I shook my head, panic rising in my chest. "I don't care about justice. I just want to disappear. Please, just let me disappear." He crossed the tent in 3 strides and knelt in front of where I stood, putting himself at eye level with me. "I would," he said softly, "if I thought that's what you really needed. But I've seen what unpunished betrayal does to survivors. How it festers and rots and destroys you from the inside. You deserve to face him. You deserve to watch him answer for what he did." "I'm scared," I whispered, the admission ripping out of me before I could stop it. "I'm so scared." "I know," he said, "but you won't be alone. I'll be with you every step. I swear it." I wanted to say no, wanted to run and keep running until I found a place where no one would ever find me. But something in his eyes, steady and certain and unwavering, made me pause, made me wonder if maybe, just maybe, I was tired of running. "If I do this," I said slowly, "and if it all goes wrong, if he hurts me again, or if your pack rejects me because I'm not really a boy, will you still help me leave?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Whatever you need, wherever you want to go. I'll make sure you're safe." I studied his face, looking for the lie, but all I saw was sincerity and a bone-deep determination that reminded me why alphas were supposed to be leaders, because sometimes, when everything was falling apart, you needed someone who could stand steady in the chaos. "Okay," I said finally, "I'll help you. But I need one more thing." "Anything," he said immediately. "I need you to stop looking at me like that." His brow furrowed. "Like what?" "Like I'm your mate," I said, forcing the words out even though they hurt. "Like you're falling in love with me. Because I can't. I'm not ready for that. I might never be ready for that. And if you keep looking at me like I'm something precious, I'm going to break." Pain flashed across his face, so raw it made my chest ache. But he nodded slowly, rising to his feet and taking a deliberate step back. "All right," he said, and his voice was carefully controlled. "I'll try, but you should know. The bond doesn't care whether you're ready or not. It just is. And trying not to feel it is like trying not to breathe." "Then learn to hold your breath," I said more harshly than I intended. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I've been holding my breath for 20 years, he said quietly. "Waiting for you. What's a little longer?" Chapter 6. We left for the southern pack the next morning. The alpha insisted I ride with him on his horse rather than in one of the supply wagons. "It's faster," he'd said, "and safer." But I suspected the real reason was the mate bond pulling at him, demanding proximity. I didn't argue. The thought of being surrounded by strange warriors in a wagon made my skin crawl, and at least on the horse I could keep my back to him and pretend the warmth of his chest against my spine didn't make me feel safer than I had in years. The journey took 3 days. We rode through forests and meadows, past small villages where people stopped their work to bow as the Alpha King passed. I kept my head down, hiding beneath the hood of my cloak, hyper-aware of every eye that might see through my disguise. The Alpha's warriors treated me with careful respect. No questions about who I was, or why their king had brought me along. I suspected he'd threatened anyone who bothered me with something unpleasant. The nights were harder. We made camp in the evenings, and the Alpha insisted I sleep in his tent again for safety. "There are bears in these woods," he'd said when I argued, "and worse things than bears. You're not sleeping alone." So I curled up on one side of his tent while he stayed on the other, the space between us charged with unspoken tension. I could hear his breathing in the darkness, slow and controlled, and I knew he wasn't sleeping any more than I was. Sometimes I'd wake in the middle of the night to find him watching me, his eyes reflecting moonlight like a wolf's, and the intensity of his gaze made my heart race for reasons I refused to examine. On the 3rd morning we crested a hill, and I saw the southern pack spread out below us. The sight punched the air from my lungs. My home, or what used to be my home before Titus destroyed everything. The packlands looked exactly as I remembered, rolling fields, dense forests, and at the center, the great stone manor where I'd grown up. I could see the garden where my mother used to grow herbs, the training yard where my father had taught young warriors. Memories crashed over me so hard I swayed in the saddle, and the Alpha's arm tightened around my waist, steadying me. "We can wait," he murmured near my ear. "Take as long as you need." "No," I said, forcing strength into my voice. "Let's get this over with." We rode through the packlands with the Alpha's warriors flanking us like an honor guard. People stopped to stare as we passed, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. I kept my hood up and my eyes down, terrified someone would recognize me despite 8 years, and a disguise. The manor looked different than I remembered. Smaller, somehow, and darker. The gardens were overgrown, the stone walls cracked in places. It looked like Titus had let everything fall into disrepair, more interested in spending my parents' wealth than maintaining their legacy. The Alpha dismounted first, then reached up to help me down. His hands were warm around my waist, and he held on a moment longer than necessary, as if he could transfer some of his strength to me through touch alone. "Remember," he said quietly, "you're not alone." I nodded, not trusting my voice. He led me through the manor's main entrance, his warriors spreading out to secure the exits. Servants scattered like startled birds, whispering urgently. Within minutes, a man appeared at the top of the grand staircase. A man I recognized despite 8 years, and the gray that now streaked his hair. My Uncle Titus. "Your Majesty," Titus said, descending the stairs with a bow that was just respectful enough not to be insulting. "What an unexpected honor. If I'd known you were coming, I would have prepared a proper welcome." His voice was exactly as I remembered. Smooth, cultured, utterly devoid of genuine warmth. The sound of it made my skin crawl. "This isn't a social visit," the Alpha said, his tone cold enough to frost glass. "I'm here on official business regarding crimes committed against a member of your family." Titus's expression shifted to confusion, though I caught the flicker of wariness in his eyes. "I'm afraid I don't understand, Your Majesty. What crimes?" The Alpha gestured to me. "Perhaps you could explain what happened to your niece, Livia Silverclaw." The color drained from Titus's face. His eyes snapped to me, really looking at me for the first time, and I watched recognition dawn. For 8 years I'd imagined this moment, what I'd say, how I'd feel. I'd pictured myself strong and defiant, spitting accusations in his face. But now, standing in front of the man who'd sold me, I felt 7 years old again. Small, and helpless, and terrified. "That's impossible," Titus breathed. "Livia died." "The slavers said—" "The slavers lied," the Alpha interrupted coldly. "Though I'm curious how you knew what the slavers said, since you claimed she was taken by raiders." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see Titus's mind working, see him calculating his options, trying to find a way out of the trap closing around him. "I can explain," he started. "Please, Your Majesty, let me explain. It was a misunderstanding. The child was difficult, unstable. I thought she'd be better off." "You sold her," the Alpha said, his voice dropping to a growl that made every wolf in the room stand at attention. "Sold a 7-year-old child to illegal slavers who put her in a labor camp where she should have died. Don't insult me by calling it a misunderstanding." Titus's facade cracked, fear replacing his carefully maintained composure. "She was a drain on the estate," he said, the words tumbling out desperately. "A weak female child, with no value. Darius should have had sons, but instead he left me with a useless girl who couldn't even shift properly yet. What was I supposed to do? Waste the family fortune raising her?" The words hit me like physical blows. Useless. No value. Waste. Every fear I'd carried for 8 years, every horrible thought that had whispered through my mind in the darkest moments, he'd just confirmed them all. "Is that all I was to you?" My voice came out broken, barely more than a whisper. 3 silver coins? Titus looked at me with cold eyes. "You were worth exactly what I got for you," he said. "A burden I was glad to be rid of." Something snapped inside me. I lunged for him, 8 years of buried rage erupting all at once. but the Alpha caught me around the waist before I could reach my uncle. I fought against his hold, screaming words that were more animal than human, wanting nothing more than to tear Titus apart with my bare hands. "Enough," the Alpha said, his voice carrying the weight of command that made my wolf instinctively submit. I slumped in his arms, shaking with fury and grief and a pain so deep it felt like it would swallow me whole. The Alpha turned to his guards. "Arrest him," he ordered. "Titus Silverclaw, you're charged with human trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder, and theft of pack resources. You'll be tried under pack law." As the guards moved forward, Titus's expression transformed from fear to rage. "You can't do this," he snarled. "I'm a beta. I have rights." "You forfeited those rights when you sold a child," the Alpha said coldly. "Take him away." I watched through blurry eyes as my uncle was dragged from the manor, still shouting protests and threats. When he was gone, the strength went out of my legs, and I would have collapsed if the Alpha hadn't been holding me. He scooped me up like I weighed nothing, carrying me away from the entrance hall and up the stairs. "Where are we going?" I asked weakly. "Somewhere you can break apart in private," he said gently. "You've earned it." Chapter 7. The Alpha carried me to a bedroom I recognized immediately. My old room, though it looked different now. The walls that had been painted pink were now bare stone, and all my childhood belongings were gone. It was empty, except for a bed and a chest, stripped of anything that might remind someone that a little girl had once lived here. He set me down carefully on the bed and stepped back, giving me space even though I could feel the bond pulling at him, demanding he stay close and comfort me. "He took everything," I whispered, looking around the empty room. "Even my memories." "No," the Alpha said firmly. "Memories live in here," he tapped his chest, "not in rooms or objects. He couldn't take what mattered." I wanted to believe him, but the grief was too heavy. I curled into myself, drawing my knees to my chest, and finally let the tears come. 8 years of buried pain poured out in wrenching sobs that shook my whole body. I cried for my parents, for the childhood that had been stolen, for Marcus and all the other children who died in the camps. I cried for the girl I'd buried and the boy I'd pretended to be. I cried until there was nothing left inside me but emptiness. Through it all, the Alpha sat on the floor beside the bed, close enough that I could reach for him if I needed to, but far enough away not to crowd me. He didn't try to fix anything or tell me it would be okay. He just stayed, solid and steady, a quiet presence in my storm. When I finally stopped crying, my throat raw and my head pounding, I found his hand resting on the bed near me. I stared at it for a long moment, this symbol of everything I'd been afraid to want. Then, making a decision I only half understood, I reached out and laced my fingers through his. His breath caught. The bond pulsed between us, warm and insistent, and I felt his wolf surge forward with desperate joy. But he didn't move otherwise, didn't take it as permission for more. Just held my hand like it was something precious. "Thank you," I whispered, "for making him answer." "You don't have to thank me," he said quietly. "That was justice, and justice shouldn't require gratitude." We sat in silence for a while, his thumb tracing small circles on the back of my hand. Eventually, I found the courage to ask the question that had been haunting me since we arrived. "What happens to me now?" "Whatever you want to happen," he said. "The estate legally belongs to you as Darius's heir. You could reclaim it, live here, rebuild your family's legacy." "I don't want it," I said immediately. The thought of living in this house, surrounded by memories of Titus, made my skin crawl. "I don't want anything he touched." "Then we'll sell it," he said simply. "Use the money to fund survivor programs for children who've been trafficked. Turn something horrible into something that helps others." The idea stirred something in my chest. Not quite hope, but maybe the shadow of it. "I could do that?" "It's your estate," he said. "You can do whatever you want with it." "I don't want to be alone," I admitted, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I know I'm supposed to be strong and independent, but the thought of being alone again terrifies me. You're not alone, he said, squeezing my hand. You have a pack. You have me. For as long as you want us. I turned to look at him then. Really look at him. His dark hair was disheveled, his clothes rumpled from days of travel. There were lines of exhaustion around his eyes, and I realized he'd barely slept since finding me in the labor camp. He'd put his entire kingdom on hold to help me, had traveled across territories and confronted my uncle, all because his wolf had recognized me as his mate. Why? I asked. Why do all this for someone you barely know? Because the bond tells me you're mine to protect, he said simply. And because even if the bond didn't exist, I'd still want to help you. You survived 8 years of hell and came out still capable of compassion. That's not weakness. That's strength beyond measure. I don't feel strong, I whispered. I feel broken. You're not broken, he said fiercely. You're healing. There's a difference. He paused, then added more softly. And for what it's worth, I've been broken too. I understand. I thought about what he'd told me, about his mother, about his own time in the labor camps. How did you survive it? I asked. The camps, the trauma. How did you become this instead of, I gestured vaguely, someone bitter and cruel? I had help, he said. My father's brother found me and brought me home, gave me time to heal, didn't force me to be strong before I was ready. And then, when I was old enough to understand, he told me I had a choice. Let what happened define me, or use it to make sure it never happened to anyone else. You chose to fix things, I said. Yes, and I'm still choosing it. Every day. He met my eyes. You could choose it too. Not right now. You need time to grieve and heal. But someday, when you're ready, you could use what you survived to help others survive too. The idea was both terrifying and compelling. I wouldn't know where to start, I admitted. You'd figure it out, he said with quiet confidence. And you wouldn't be alone. I'd help you. The whole pack would help you. The offer hung between us, heavy with implications. If I accepted, I'd be binding myself to this pack, to this alpha, to a future I hadn't dared imagine. If I refused, I'd be free but alone, starting over with nothing but the clothes on my back. I need time, I said finally. Time to think, to figure out who I am without the disguise. Take all the time you need, he said immediately. There's no rush. I'll wait. Even if I decide to leave? Even if I reject the bond? Pain flickered across his face, but he nodded. Even then. Your choice is more important than my wants. The word settled something in my chest, the fear that had been my constant companion since the moment our eyes met in the labor camp. He meant it. He would actually let me go if that's what I chose. Can I ask you something? I said. Anything. What's your real name? I asked. I've been calling you the Alpha in my head, but you must have an actual name. He smiled, and it transformed his face. Cassian, he said. My name is Cassian Blackwood. Cassian, I repeated, testing the name on my tongue. It felt right somehow, solid and real. Thank you, Cassian. For everything. You're welcome, Luca, he said, using my chosen name deliberately. Or is it Livia now? I considered the question. I don't know yet, I admitted. Both names feel like costumes. I'm not sure who I am underneath them. Then maybe you get to decide, he said. Maybe you get to create someone new from the pieces of who you were and who you had to become. The idea sent a thrill through me. The thought that I could choose, that I didn't have to be defined by either my past or my disguise, that I could be someone entirely my own creation. I think, I said slowly, I'd like to try that. Cassian's smile was brilliant. Then that's what we'll do, he said. We'll give you time and space and whatever you need to figure out who you want to be. For the first time in 8 years, I felt something unfurl in my chest. Not hope, Not quite, but maybe the beginning of it. Maybe, just maybe, I could survive this too. And maybe, with this alpha beside me, I could become something more than just a survivor. Maybe I could become whole. Chapter 8. I spent 3 days in my old room, sorting through the remnants of my childhood and saying goodbye to the girl I'd been. Cassian respected my need for space, checking on me twice a day but otherwise leaving me alone to process. The manor staff, most of whom didn't remember me from before, treated me with cautious kindness, bringing meals I barely touched and fresh clothes I didn't ask for. On the 4th day, I ventured downstairs. The manor felt different in daylight, less oppressive. I found Cassian in my father's old study, surrounded by papers and ledgers. "What are you doing?" I asked from the doorway. He looked up, and the warmth in his eyes when he saw me made my breath catch. "Documenting everything," he said. "All of Titus's dealings, his finances, the people he worked with. I want to make sure we catch everyone involved in the trafficking network, not just him." I stepped into the room, drawn by curiosity. "Did you find anything?" "More than I wanted to," he admitted grimly. "He's been selling children for years. At least 20 that I can confirm. Some went to labor camps like you. Others were sold to wealthy families as servants. A few," his voice hardened, "went to places I don't want to describe." The rage that flared in my chest was unexpected in its intensity. "We have to find them," I said. "All of them. We have to bring them home." "That's the plan," Cassian said. "I've already sent teams to track down everyone we can. It'll take time, but we'll find as many as possible." He paused, studying my face. "Would you want to help? I know it's asking a lot, but you understand what they've been through better than anyone." The thought terrified me, but it also called to something deep in my chest, the need to turn my suffering into something meaningful. "Yes," I said. "I want to help." Cassian's expression softened. "Thank you." We worked together for the rest of the day, sorting through Titus's records. It was painful, reading the ledgers where children were listed like livestock, with their ages and sale prices. But it was also clarifying. This wasn't just about my pain anymore. It was about all the other victims who deserved justice. As evening approached, Cassian set down the papers he'd been reading and looked at me seriously. "There's something we need to discuss," he said. "About the trial." My stomach tightened. "What about it?" "Titus has demanded a formal pack trial," Cassian explained. "Which means you'll have to testify in front of the entire pack council. They'll ask questions, probably brutal ones. His lawyers will try to discredit you, to make you seem unreliable." The thought of standing in front of strangers and reliving my trauma made me want to run, but I forced myself to stay calm. "When?" 3 days, he said. "I can delay it longer if you need more time." "No," I said, surprising myself with my certainty. "Let's get it over with. The sooner he faces justice, the sooner those other children can be freed." Cassian crossed the room to stand in front of me. "You don't have to do this alone," he said quietly. "I'll be there the entire time. And if it becomes too much, we can stop." "You can't stop a trial just because I'm uncomfortable," I argued. "I can if you're my mate," he said, and something in the way he said it made my heart race. "The law protects mates from being forced to testify if it causes significant distress. All you have to do is accept the bond, and you'll have legal protection." I stared at him, trying to process what he was suggesting. "You want me to accept the bond so I can avoid testifying?" "No," he said firmly. "I want you to accept the bond because I'm falling in love with you, and watching you hurt is killing me. But if legal protection is what finally convinces you to give me a chance, I'll take it." The raw honesty in his voice stole my breath. "You can't love me," I whispered. "You barely know me." "I know you survived 8 years of hell without losing your compassion," he said. "I know you're willing to face your trauma again to help other children. I know you're brave and stubborn, and so damaged you don't even realize how strong you are. That's enough." "I'm not brave," I argued. "I'm terrified. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared, he said gently. It means being scared and doing it anyway. He reached for my hand, his touch sending electricity up my arm. Let me be scared with you. Let me stand beside you and help you through this. Please. I wanted to say yes, wanted to lean into him and accept the bond and let someone else carry part of the weight. But fear held me back. Fear that if I let myself love him, if I let myself depend on him, he'd destroy me the way everyone else had. What if I'm not enough? I whispered. What if you realize I'm too broken to be anyone's mate? Livia, he started, but I shook my head. My name is Alara, I said, making the decision in that moment. Not Livia, not Luca, just Alara, someone new. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Alara, he repeated softly. It's beautiful. What does it mean? Star, I said. My mother used to call me her little star. Emotion flickered across his face. Then Alara you are, he said. And Alara? You're more than enough. You always have been. The bond pulsed between us, warm and insistent, and I felt my wolf pressing forward, begging me to accept him, to trust him, to take the leap. If I do this, I said slowly, if I accept the bond, it's forever, isn't it? No going back. Yes, he said honestly, but it's also a choice you make every day. Accept the initial bond, and we're connected. But love, real love, that's something you choose to build over time. I studied his face, looking for any hint of deception, but all I saw was sincerity and a desperate hope that made my chest ache. I'm still angry, I said. At my uncle, at the world, at myself. I'm going to be angry for a long time. That's okay, he said. Be angry. I'll be angry with you. I'm going to have nightmares, I continued. I'm going to wake up screaming and not remember who I am or where I am. Then I'll be there when you wake up, he said. I'll remind you that you're safe. I don't know if I can love you the way you deserve to be loved, I admitted, my voice breaking. I don't know if I have that left in me. You don't have to love me yet, he said gently. Just let me love you. Let me prove that you're worth fighting for. The rest can come later, if it comes at all. The words broke something open in my chest, a wall I'd built 8 years ago to protect myself from caring too much. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I looked at this alpha who'd turned his entire world upside down for a broken girl in a labor camp. Okay, I whispered. Okay. His eyes widened with hope. Okay? I accept the bond, I said, my voice stronger now. I choose you, Cassian Blackwood. I choose to try. The moment the words left my mouth, the bond exploded to life between us. It was like being struck by lightning, overwhelming and terrifying, and absolutely right. I felt his emotions crash into mine. Love, relief, joy so profound, it brought him to his knees. And beneath it all, his wolf singing with triumph. Cassian pulled me into his arms, holding me like I was something precious. Thank you, he breathed against my hair. Thank you for trusting me. I wrapped my arms around him and let myself feel safe for the first time in 8 years. Let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I could survive this too. And maybe, with him beside me, I could do more than survive. Maybe I could heal. Maybe I could be whole. Maybe I could be happy. The bond hummed between us, promising forever. And for the first time, forever didn't sound like a prison. It sounded like hope. Chapter 9. The trial took place in the Great Hall of the Southern Pack's Council Building, a stone structure that had stood for centuries. I stood before the assembled Pack Council, 15 wolves who would decide my uncle's fate, with Cassian at my side. His hand rested on the small of my back, a constant reminder that I wasn't alone. Titus sat across from me in chains, his face twisted with rage. The 3 days since his arrest had aged him. His skin was sallow, his clothes disheveled, but his eyes still held that cold calculation I remembered from childhood. The head counselor, an elderly woman named Elena, called the trial to order. We are here to determine the guilt or innocence of Titus Silverclaw, accused of human trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder, and theft of pack resources. She turned to me. The primary witness is Alara Silverclaw, formerly known as Livia Silverclaw, daughter of the late Beta Darius Silverclaw. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many remembered my father, remembered the funeral, remembered the little girl who'd supposedly died in the years that followed. Miss Silverclaw, Elena said formally, please tell the council what happened 8 years ago. I took a deep breath, feeling Cassian's hand press more firmly against my back. Then I told them everything. The night Titus woke me, the slavers waiting beyond the gates, the 3 silver coins, the labor camps where I'd spent 8 years disguised as a boy to survive. I spoke clearly, forcing emotion out of my voice, presenting facts like they were things that had happened to someone else. It was the only way I could get through it. When I finished, the room was silent. Then Titus's lawyer, a sharp-faced man who looked like he'd never missed a meal, stood up. You claim you spent 8 years in labor camps, he said. Yet you have no proof beyond your word. I have scars, I said quietly. From 8 years of quarry work. Scars prove nothing, the lawyer countered. You could have gotten those anywhere. You could be an imposter who learned the real Livia's story and is using it to steal the Silverclaw fortune. Anger flared in my chest. I don't want the fortune, I snapped. I never wanted it. I just want justice. Convenient, the lawyer said smoothly. Tell me, Miss Silverclaw, if that's even your real name, how do we know you're not working with the Alpha King to frame my client? Everyone knows you've accepted his mate bond. Perhaps this is all an elaborate scheme to seize my client's assets. Cassian growled beside me, a sound so feral it made everyone in the room tense. You dare, he started, but I put my hand on his arm, stopping him. It's okay, I said quietly. Then louder to the lawyer. You want proof I'm Livia Silverclaw? Fine. Before anyone could stop me, I pulled my shirt over my head. Gasps echoed through the hall. I stood there in only my binding and pants, my torso covered in scars, and the marks where the binding had rubbed for 8 years. But more importantly, visible on my left shoulder blade, was my birthmark, a silver crescent moon that every pack member born with wolf blood carried in a unique pattern. My father used to trace this mark when I couldn't sleep, I said, my voice shaking with rage. He'd tell me stories about how the moon goddess gave each wolf a piece of her light to carry. That mark is registered in pack records. Check it. Confirm it's mine. Elena rose and approached me, studying the birthmark carefully. Then she pulled out an ancient leather-bound book, the pack registry, and flipped through pages until she found what she was looking for. It matches, she said, her voice carrying across the hall. The pattern is identical to the one registered for Livia Silverclaw, daughter of Darius. The lawyer's confidence faltered. Elena turned to Titus. Do you deny selling your niece to slavers? She was difficult, Titus said, his voice sharp. Unstable. I thought she'd be better off. Answer the question, Elena commanded. Did you sell Livia Silverclaw to slavers 8 years ago? Titus's jaw clenched. For a moment I thought he might lie, might try to spin some story that would save him. Then his expression hardened with defiance. Yes, he said. I sold her. She was worthless. A female child with weak wolf blood who would have drained the estate. I did what was necessary to preserve the Silverclaw legacy. The admission hung in the air like poison. You admit to selling a 7-year-old child, Elena said, her voice cold with fury. Your own niece. Your brother's daughter. I admit to making a practical decision, Titus snapped. Darius was a fool who let sentiment cloud his judgment. I saved the estate from ruin. You destroyed a child's life for money, Elena said. You violated every law of Pack and King. You betrayed the oath every beta swears, to protect the vulnerable members of the Pack. She turned to the rest of the council. I call for a vote. All in favor of finding Titus Silverclaw guilty of all charges? Every hand rose. Not a single counselor abstained. The verdict is unanimous, Elena declared. Titus Silverclaw, you are found guilty of human trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder, and theft of pack resources. The sentence is death by execution, to be carried out immediately. Death. The word echoed through the hall. I'd wanted justice, wanted him to pay for what he'd done. But hearing the death sentence pronounced made something twist in my stomach. Wait, I heard myself say. Everyone turned to look at me. Please, I said. Don't kill him. Cassian's hand tightened on my back. Alara, he started, but I shook my head. If you kill him, he doesn't have to live with what he did, I said. He doesn't have to face every day knowing he destroyed children for profit. Let him live. Let him spend the rest of his life in a cell, thinking about his choices. Elena studied me carefully. That is your right as the victim, she said finally. Do you formally request we commute the sentence to life imprisonment? Yes, I said. Let him live with his guilt. That's worse than death. Titus laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. You think you're being merciful, he said, but you're just weak, just like your father. No, I said quietly. I'm stronger than you'll ever understand, because I survived what you tried to do to me, and I'm still capable of mercy. That's not weakness, that's power. The words seemed to strike him harder than any physical blow. His face crumpled, and for the first time, I saw something that might have been shame flicker in his eyes. Take him away, Elena ordered. Guards moved forward, dragging Titus toward the doors. As he passed me, he stopped and looked at me one last time. I'm sorry, he said, and the words sounded genuine. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I wanted to hate him, wanted to feel nothing but rage. But looking at this broken man who'd once been my uncle's, all I felt was pity. I forgive you, I said softly, not for your sake, for mine, so I can move forward without carrying your hatred. Tears streaked down his face as the guards led him away. When the doors closed behind him, I felt something in my chest finally release, a weight I'd been carrying for 8 years. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it was the beginning of it. Cassian pulled me into his arms, and I let myself collapse against him, shaking with the aftermath of adrenaline. It's over, he murmured against my hair. It's finally over. No, I said, pulling back to look at him. It's not over. There are still 20 other children out there who need to be found. This is just the beginning. His eyes lit with understanding and pride. Then we'll find them, he said. Together. All of them. Together, I agreed. And as the Pack Council applauded and people came forward to welcome me home, I realized something profound. I wasn't broken anymore. I was healing. And with Cassian beside me, with a purpose bigger than my own pain, I was finally whole. Chapter 10. 6 months later, I stood in the courtyard of what had once been my family's estate, but it looked nothing like the neglected manor I'd returned to half a year ago. Now it was a sanctuary, a home for children rescued from trafficking rings across the kingdom. The gardens my mother had planted were in full bloom again, and the sound of children's laughter filled the air. We'd found 18 of the 20 children Titus had sold. 2 were still missing, but we hadn't given up. We'd never give up. Ilara, a small voice called. I turned to see Mira, a 9-year-old girl we'd rescued from a labor camp 3 months ago. She'd been so quiet when we found her, barely speaking, flinching at every sudden movement. Now she ran toward me with a gap-toothed smile, holding something in her cupped hands. Look what I found, she said, opening her hands to reveal a blue butterfly. Isn't it beautiful? Stunning, I agreed, kneeling to her level. Did you make a wish? 3, she said seriously. 1 for me, 1 for my brother. Her voice caught, wherever he is. And 1 for you, because you saved me. My throat tightened. You saved yourself, Mira? I just helped you find your way home. She threw her arms around me, and I hugged her back, breathing in the scent of soap and sunshine. This, I thought, this is what healing looks like. When Mira ran off to show the other children her butterfly, I felt arms wrap around me from behind. Cassian's chin rested on my shoulder, and I leaned back into his warmth. "She's doing better," he observed. "They all are," I said. "It just takes time." "Speaking of time," he said, a smile in his voice, "I have something to show you." He led me away from the main house to a smaller building we'd been renovating. Inside, the walls were lined with bookshelves, and comfortable chairs were scattered throughout. A fireplace dominated one wall, already crackling with warmth. "A library?" I asked, confused. "A memorial," he corrected gently, "for Marcus and all the others who didn't make it." He gestured to a plaque on the wall. "Their names, so they're never forgotten." I read through the names, tears streaming down my face. Marcus's name was there, along with dozens of others, children I'd known, children who'd died trying to survive what Titus and others like him had done to them. "We can't save everyone," Cassian said softly, "but we can remember them, honor them, make sure their suffering meant something." I turned to him, this alpha who'd completely changed my life. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" "I think I'm the lucky one," he said, pulling me close. "You taught me that strength isn't about power or dominance. It's about surviving the worst and still choosing compassion." "I learned that from you," I argued. "No," he said firmly. "You already knew it. I just gave you a safe place to remember." We stood there together, surrounded by memories of the fallen and the promise of healing for those who remained. The mate bond hummed between us, no longer painful or overwhelming, but comfortable. "Right. I love you," I said, the words coming easily now. I'd told him before, but it still felt new each time, like a gift I was learning to give. "I love you too," he said. "My star, my mate, my Ilara." A child's shriek of laughter echoed from outside, and we both smiled. "We should get back," I said. "The children will wonder where we went." "Let them wonder for another minute," he murmured, kissing me softly. When we finally returned to the courtyard, the sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. The children gathered for dinner, and I helped serve them, making sure each one had enough food, enough warmth, enough love. After dinner, as I tucked Mira into bed, she grabbed my hand. "Ilara?" she said sleepily. "Will you tell me a story?" "What kind of story?" I asked, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. "A happy one," she said. "About a girl who was lost but then got found." I thought for a moment, then began. "Once upon a time, there was a girl who lost everything." I told her a story about survival and healing, about finding family in unexpected places, about learning that strength comes in many forms. I told her about an alpha who saw past disguises to the truth beneath, and a girl who learned she was worth fighting for. When I finished, Mira was nearly asleep. "Is it true?" she mumbled. "Did that really happen?" "Every word," I whispered. "And you know what the best part is?" "What?" "The story isn't over. It's still being written. And you're part of it now. You and every child here. We're writing it together." She smiled and closed her eyes, and I sat with her until her breathing evened into sleep. Then I slipped out into the hallway, where Cassian was waiting. "How many?" he asked. "How many children have we helped?" 37, I said. "In 6 months. But there are thousands more out there who need help." "Then we'll help them," he said simply. "However long it takes." I took his hand, lacing our fingers together. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "Finding me, all the complications I brought into your life?" He stopped walking and turned to face me, his expression fierce. "Never," he said. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Every choice I made that led me to you was worth it." "Even the labor camps?" I asked quietly. "Even your own trauma?" "Especially that," he said. "Because I understand what these children are going through. I can help them in ways others can't." That suffering wasn't meaningless. It gave me purpose. I understood. My own suffering had been horrible, traumatic, something I'd never wish on anyone. But it had also made me who I was. And who I was, who I'd chosen to become, was someone who could help others survive what I'd survived. We walked through the sanctuary together, checking on children, ensuring everything was secure for the night. When we finally made it back to our own chambers, the rooms that had once been my parents', now transformed into something new, I felt at peace. "Thank you," I said as we got ready for bed. "For everything. For seeing me when I was invisible. For giving me time to heal. For loving me even when I couldn't love myself." "You don't have to thank me for loving you," he said, pulling me into his arms. "It's the easiest thing I've ever done." We lay together in comfortable silence, the mate bond warm and content between us. Outside, I could hear the night sounds of the forest, the distant howl of wolves running free. "Cassian," I said. "I think I'm happy." He squeezed me tighter. "Good. You deserve to be happy." "So do you," I said. "And I'm going to spend the rest of our lives making sure you are." "That's a long time," he teased. "A very long time." "Good thing I'm patient," I said. He laughed, and the sound filled me with warmth. This was what I'd been searching for without knowing it. Not perfection, not the absence of pain, but this. Connection. Purpose. Love. Healing wasn't linear. Some days I still woke up from nightmares, still flinched at sudden movements, still struggled with the trauma of my past. But those days were fewer now, and when they came, I wasn't alone. I had Cassian, had the children we'd saved, had a purpose bigger than my own pain. I had become someone new. Not Livia, not Luca, but Alara. A survivor who chose to do more than survive. A broken girl who learned she could heal by helping others heal. A star that had been lost in darkness, but found her way back to light. "Tell me something," Cassian said drowsily. "Anything." "Sometimes," I said, "when I look at everything we've built, at all the children we've saved, at this life we're creating together, sometimes I can barely remember the girl who was sold for 3 silver coins." "Is that good or bad?" he asked. "Good," I said with certainty. "Because it means I'm not defined by what was done to me. I'm defined by what I chose to do after." "What did you choose?" he asked, though I knew he already knew the answer. I smiled in the darkness. I chose to matter. I chose to fight. I chose to love. "And?" he prompted. "And I chose you," I finished. "Every day, I choose you." "I choose you too," he whispered. "Always." As sleep claimed me, I thought about the little girl I'd been, the one in silver thread dresses who'd run through gardens, who'd believed her family would always protect her. That girl was gone, destroyed by betrayal and survival. But in her place was someone stronger. Someone who'd learned that family isn't always blood, that strength comes in many forms, and that sometimes the greatest power is choosing to rise after you've been broken. I'd been sold for 3 silver coins, but I'd found something worth infinitely more. I'd found myself, and in finding myself, I'd found home. The end.